welcome to HD's weekly talk show, The Interview. Once again, we bring you a senior and seasoned politician, a voice of experience, Yashwant Sinha, former Union Minister and someone who has recently joined the Trinamool Congress. Welcome to the show, Mr. Sinha, and thank you for being with us.
You're welcome.
My first question, are you angry and upset at the state of affairs in the country?
I'm very angry and I'm very upset. It's like somebody watching all the good things of the past disintegrating. All the values that one has cherished, everything that one has stood for and lived. If all that is getting destroyed in front of your eyes, then a person like me will feel angry. So I'm definitely angry, I'm upset. And even at this ripe old age, I will try to do whatever I can to remedy things.
You were speaking about values, but the BJP, from its traditional definition, has really never been seen as a value-based party. And yet you were on board with them for so many years.
Yeah, it's a very natural question to ask. But I served the BJP and in the BJP government when it was led by Atal Bihari Vajpayee and Mr. Advani. That was far apart from the BJP of today and the government of Mr. Modi and Mr. Shah. There are many differences, but I would like to tell you that Vajpayee was a great believer in democratic values and in parliamentary traditions and in consensus. And there are many examples of when we were serving in government. Compared to that, the present regime, it appears to me, led by Mr. Modi and Mr. Shah, it does not believe in consensus. It believes in riding roughshod. It believes in suppressing all dissent. It believes in conquest, not consensus. It believes in crushing people, not co-opting people. So, who is with BJP today, except BJP itself?
The people? What about the elections? What about the seats they are winning?
Very good question. Elections are ephemeral. And if you look at elections as proof of the conviction of the people, then we also know from our history that that conviction changes very quickly. Now, suppose things were to change in the forthcoming assembly elections of 5 states or in the 2024 elections. How would we conclude? We'll say, well, people are not convinced of this leadership anymore. So let's not go by that. This is temporary, this is transient, this is true for today, may not be true for tomorrow.
But in a democracy, the hallmark is the elections, is the voter. And your success or failure of any leader or any government depends on how the voters see it and how the performance has been. So how can you change that?
I'll beg to differ with you on that. Elections are important in a democracy. People exercise their right to vote once in 5 years or whatever. But that is not the sum total of democracy. To my mind, the soul of democracy is consensus. Even when you have a majority in the legislature, whether it's the state assembly or the parliament, you have to take the opposition with you. To conclude that victory in elections is the proof of democratic values is not true. It is important. We must use voting in order to elect a government, elect representatives. But then once elected, the government or the representatives have to work according to consensus.
When you spoke of the opposition, taking the opposition along, of course, but the opposition is completely fragmented. There is, if I may say so, hardly any opposition. So what are we talking about?
No, I entirely agree with you. I am also very, very distressed at the fact that the opposition is not behaving as effectively as it should in Parliament or outside. And that's what is enabling the government to literally getting away with blue murder. They can do whatever they want, and these issues sometimes are not even raised in Parliament. I mean, left to myself, I would any day in Parliament raise the issue of Ashoka University. What is happening at Ashoka University? That is a classic case of intolerance of dissent.
One of the many.
One of the many. But I don't see the opposition being worried about it. And that certainly is a matter of concern to a person like me. I hope things will change in the near future.
So for a senior and experienced politician like you, what is the way to get the opposition together, and where do we go from here?
Well, I think going forward, after the results of these 5 assembly elections come out, I think it will provide a new fillip to opposition unity. And when we are talking about opposition unity, Kumkumji, let me make it very clear. My personal view, and I have not discussed it in the party that I have joined recently, so I can't say it's the party's view, but my personal view is that the like-minded opposition parties should come together, as many of them as possible, and not wait for the day when everyone will come together. That is sometimes something which stymies the opposition unity. The second thing, which is a big, big obstacle in the path of opposition unity, is who is the leader of this coalition? Exactly. Who is the alliance leader? Let's not go into that question. Why should we go into that question? Who will be the Prime Minister of this alliance? Who is the chief ministerial candidate of the BJP in Bengal today? Nobody. They have not projected. So if you look at our political history, all along you will find that political parties have projected a prime ministerial or a chief ministerial face only when it has suited them. Otherwise, they have said, we'll decide after the elections. The legislators will decide. This is what they have said. So we should not come under pressure of the ruling party when they challenge us to declare our leader. We should say, okay, here is collective leadership, and we'll proceed further under this collective leadership, and we'll decide on the Prime Minister once you give us a majority. What's the harm in that?
Takes me back to the Janta experiment and its failure when the same principle was applied. But once they came to power, then the whole thing went helter-skelter, nothing worked, and ultimately the government didn't last. So if what you're saying is applied, maybe the Janta experiment may come into play again.
Not really. Let me tell you, because I was part of that experiment. As far as the Janta Dal is concerned, the acknowledged leader was Mr. VP Singh. There was no doubt. There was Chandrasekhar, who was my leader. There was Devi Lal. But there was no doubt in anyone's mind that whatever number of seats we got and whatever coalition we built was under the leadership of Mr. VP Singh. There was some drama before he got elected as the leader of the parliamentary party.
Lot of drama.
But his leadership was never in doubt. Why did it collapse? Because after all, Janta Dal was an alliance. It was a coalition of parties. And once in government, those who were in government, including the Prime Minister, forgot the principle of consensus. So there are many reasons why that experiment failed, or the earlier Janta Party experiment failed. Now we know from experience, and we'll have to be careful. We'll have to avoid those pitfalls.
But to put it simply, to my mind, it failed because there were too many contenders for the Prime Ministership. And that could happen even now, because there are tall leaders. There's Mamata Banerjee, there's Sharad Pawar, there are a lot of them. So I don't know how you'll be able to escape that pitfall now when you talk of opposition unity without a face?
Well, I am talking of opposition unity because we know that there have been many occasions. Who was the projected Prime Minister in 1977? Nobody. Yet the then Janata Party recorded a massive win in the Lok Sabha elections without a face.
Win is okay. Win is okay. That I concede.
Okay.
The problem begins
Then
once the numbers are there, and then who will be the Prime Minister?
Yeah, that will depend on the personality of the Prime Minister. Will the Prime Minister be able to manage all the various elements and all the various aspirants?
But you see, after a win, infighting takes over, which is what happened.
No, it is not. It's not a given. I would say it is not a given. It will entirely depend on who becomes the Prime Minister of this coalition. And if the Prime Minister is a person who believes in consensus, then there should be no problem. Let me give you one example, though JP was wrong then. I had met JP, and at that time I was working as Principal Secretary to Chief Minister Karpuri Thakur in Bihar. And there were differences at the national level, there were differences at the state level, and the coalition was, or the Janata Party government was in trouble. So I went to JP and we were talking about this. I wanted to request JP to do something about this. So he told me one thing. He said, Yashwantji, power is a very powerful glue. So I don't think they will fall apart. But JP was wrong because even that glue did not work.
Exactly. And that is why it may not work even now.
No, I mean, I will not say that history will repeat itself every time. It has repeated itself twice. There is no necessity that it will repeat itself a third time also.
You once said, and I quote, "Fate has never made available the low-lying fruit for me." But you've actually had it good. You've been Rajya Sabha member, you've had important positions, you've been a bureaucrat, you've been a union minister. So I think fate has always made the low-lying fruit available for you.
These fruits which you consider to be low-lying have come to me in a very, very difficult way. I mean, I'm not blaming you. People look at the end product. So what is the end product in this? End product is what posts I held and all that. But do you know, when I left the IAS in 1984, contested the election as a Janata Party candidate, Lok Sabha election, got something like 10,000 votes. I went through so much, Kumkumji, you will not believe it. So I've gone through all those humiliations. That humiliation part nobody talks about.
So that is the initial struggle and humiliation, unfortunately, but that is the initial struggle of most people who make it.
Yeah, so,
but once you made it, then it's been never looking back and you've always done well.
I don't know. I don't know whether you will say that I have always done well. It's true, in my, 84 to now 2021. 35, 36 years. In these 35, 36 years, I have been in government only for 6 years. Rest of the time I may have been in parliament or in the state legislature, but I have been in the opposition. I have not been in government. And you can't say in the opposition you are enjoying the low-lying fruit. Being a member of parliament or MLA does not make available those low-lying fruits.
But then politics is not always about power. Politics is about functionality. And you always had a role in politics, in political life.
I had a role because, how shall I put it? I had a role because I came from a very different background. But it has always been an uphill struggle. So there have been periods of my political life where I have been in wilderness.
Allow me to ask and put it rather bluntly. One view is that Mr. Yashwant Sinha is ungrateful. He got a lot from the BJP. He had it good. And now he is turning his back on the party and criticizing and attacking those who help build him up.
Who in the present regime built me up within the BJP? Who?
It's not about people, it's about the party.
So let's talk about the party. I have admitted to you that I received a great deal of affection and support from Advani ji, who was president of the party, and from Vajpayee ji, who was the tallest leader of the party and then prime minister. I have no complaints. But is the BJP of today the BJP of Advani and Atal Bihari Vajpayee? No, it's not. That's one point. The second point is, what did the present leadership of the BJP give me? Go back and ask them this question. What have they given me?
So that's just the point, Mr. Sinha. It doesn't work like, if you give me, I stay, you deny me, and I leave.
It has never worked like that in my life. You see, whether I was in the civil service or in politics, whether in the BJP or elsewhere, I have always given importance to my own self-respect. I don't care whether I get a post or I don't get a post. The most important thing for me is whether I get respect in the party in which I am.
What is your definition of respect?
Well, my definition of respect is that they will give me time when I ask for it. They will give some weightage to the opinions which I express. That they will generally treat me well, not like a pariah, not like somebody who they can mess around with. No. I did not get any post when Mr. Gadkari was the president of the party. But I remember many occasions where he'll be coming in, I'll be sitting somewhere at the back in a meeting, and he'll stop by and say, hello, how are you, Yashwantji, and this, that, and the other.
Wouldn't you attribute this to different people, different personalities?
No. I think there are some standard practices which do not apply to or do not vary because the personalities change. Irrespective of who are the people involved, the norms must remain the same.
Why Mamata Banerjee and why the TMC?
I have great respect for the fact that she's been a fighter all her life. She's come up the really tough way. It's never been easy. She has suffered physical injuries in that process also. The real fight, to my mind, today is in Bengal. And therefore I chose the TMC because I wanted to be in the real fight.
Has it been a no strings attached deal with Mamata and you, or is it that there is an offer of the Rajya Sabha being given to you at a later point?
So these small things have never bothered me, have never been considerations in any of my decision-making processes.
One view is that since Dinesh Trivedi has quit and his seat has fallen vacant, there is a prospect of Mamata making that offer to you. And if that happens, would you be happy to come back to Rajya Sabha?
I will not venture an opinion on this at this point of time because, as you said, it is dependent on so many ifs. So let's come to the bridge. We'll decide whether to cross it or not.
One of the reasons you said that you joined Mamata Banerjee was that she offered herself as a hostage during the Kandahar crisis. But this is something which has come up now and we have not heard it before. So the timing of what you said and the authenticity of what you said is really being questioned at this point.
Look, it's like this. I had said this maybe 3 years ago in a public hall meeting in Kolkata. Why would I tell a lie? If it was not true, I mean, Mamata is a fighter is something which is well known. She is a courageous lady, that is well known. So it does not really add to her personality if I tell you now that I remember this particular episode in which she had offered to Mr. Vajpayee to go to Kandahar as a hostage, provided the other passengers were released.
Only two things to that. One, the timing, as I said, it's about, even if you said it 3-4 years ago, this happened, Kandahar was 20 years ago. So, for 15-16 years, a complete silence on that. And second, there is nobody to corroborate, nobody living to corroborate that story. And those who are, like Shanta Kumar, etc., have denied it.
Okay. So, why would I told you that I made this statement some 3-4 years ago. Why would I repeat it now? I would repeat it to show that Mamata Banerjee is really a courageous lady. Mr. Shanta Kumar, whoever you are naming, they did not, even if that story was printed in a small letter somewhere, why didn't they respond then? And why would, I'll come back to the question that I asked you, why would I say it now? I said it now because I remember that, and it adds to the fact that Mamata is a courageous lady and she's a fighter and all that. So it doesn't really matter to me whether people remember it or don't remember it. I remember it, and I have not said an untruth.
You also said that the tipping point of your joining Mamata Banerjee was the attack on her recently. While there have been contradictory reports on whether it was an attack or an accident.
Absolutely right. Good question. Let me tell you that even the Election Commission's name is taken now. That Election Commission says it's an attack. It was not an attack, it was an accident. There is an inquiry going on. The matter is being investigated. There is an FIR, and we'll await the result.
Reportedly, you and your son Jayant do not agree on many issues. How different is your politics from his?
He is the BJP MP from that seat which I used to represent earlier. So that is a given, that he is a BJP MP today. I am completely unattached. I am not in any parliament or a state assembly, so I'm a free person. I decide my own course of action. He decides his own course of action. We may not agree on the politics of the day, but we remain father and son.
You may not agree, or you do not agree?
We do not agree. As of now, obviously we do not agree.
One view is that you helped Jayant get into politics, and the baby steps he took were because of you. The other view is that thanks to you and because of you, his career in the BJP is jeopardized.
Fine, okay. I'm glad you asked me this question. The first part is not in doubt. We don't have to therefore say anything about it. As far as the second part is concerned, if his career is jeopardized because of any action on my part, then those who are jeopardizing his career in the BJP, that means the bigwigs of the BJP where these decisions are taken, I would say are not behaving in a gentlemanly fashion. Because father and son, and this is not the first time that it has happened in our politics, there have been many families where there have been difference of political opinion, and people of the same family have been in different parties. So, if it has happened in our case, it is nothing unusual. And if that is so, then why should the son be penalized for the actions of his father? Will that stand scrutiny of any kind? Perhaps not.
Are you disappointed with Jayant, and do you wish things would have been different between the two of you?
No, I would have been disappointed if I had suggested a course of action and they had rejected that course of action. But that's not the case.
You had once said, and I quote, "Earlier I was the nalaik baap of a laik beta. Now the roles are reversed." What did you mean by this?
Very simple. So earlier in the social media, when I started differing with the BJP, people were saying, even today they're saying, I'm spoiling the career of my son. So I'm a nalaik baap. Then an incident took place. And in that incident, they said, oh, Jayant is a nalaik baap, a beta of a laik beta. And I was commenting on the social media how opinions change and how, suddenly from nalayak you become layak, and from layak you become nalayak. Social media is actually anti-social media.
Even while you're criticizing social media, you use it quite often.
I use it. I use
Twitter.
I use Twitter. Yeah, it's a form of expression.
So, one view again, and is that as a father, people feel you could have taken a back seat to let your son go ahead in politics and prosper.
You know, the whole point about this is that as long as my mind is active, as long as my body is physically worth it, I would think and I would act. I would not like to restrict the ambit of my actions or thinking by how it will impact on Jan's career.
So you would agree that yours is a self-centered approach to life?
No, it's not. My approach is not self-centered in the sense that I am not looking at promoting myself. I am looking at the national picture. And, now that you have raised it, let me say my biggest concern today and biggest concern for the last 3-4 years has been the erosion of democratic values in this country.
Coming to another topic, as a former finance minister, what is your take on IMF's projection of India's growth going to be 11.5% in 2021? Many have rubbished that theory, but what would you say?
I would say 2-3 things. One is that we are down in the dumps. The economy is going to decline. We are going to record a minus growth in the current fiscal. And therefore, the only way from here is up. So we'll record some positive gains.
But 11.5%?
No, I'm coming to that. Now, whether it will be 11.5% or 9% or 5%, that remains to be seen. The second more important point which I'd like to make to you is the manner in which growth statistics are collected in our country. You are perhaps aware that as far as industrial production is concerned, which plays a very important role along with agriculture and services in calculating the growth of GDP in our economy, the industrial production figures completely miss out on the MSME growth figures or decline figures. So whatever statistics we are putting out are minus the growth or decline in the MSME sector. We used to presume in the past that whatever is the growth of the organized industrial sector, that will also be the growth in the MSME sector. So if the industrial production has grown by 8%, we'll presume that MSME sector would have also grown by 8%. It may have been right earlier. It is certainly not right today. Third point which I'd like to make is that the IMF projections are based on national figures supplied by the Government of India. The IMF does not go around collecting national figures, any country's figures. So their projections are based on this, and therefore they are flawed, because our whole system of collection of statistics is flawed at this point of time.
And finally, Mr. Sinha, what would you like to be remembered for? Bureaucrat turned politician, someone who mortgaged India's gold, Kandhar, or someone who has ultimately partnered with Mamata Banerjee?
As far as those three are concerned, we'll discuss it some other time. But I would like to be remembered both as an upright officer and as an upright politician. I'd like to be remembered as a rebel. Finally, as a rebel who would not give in to injustice, who would not tolerate excesses, who will not stand for, what shall I say, any dictatorship by anyone.
Thank you, Mr. Sinha. It's been a pleasure. And thank you for answering all the questions.
Thank you.